Hi there everyone, this is Alan, and in this video you are going to learn about user authentication and a role assignment in ASP.NET Core using ASP.NET Core Identity. Firstly, we will explore how to handle user registration and the login/logout functionality in our ASP.NET Core MVC project. Then we will discuss how to assign different roles to our users, such as an admin role, a manager role, or any custom role you prefer. With this knowledge, we'll create a form web application with multiple users, and afterward, we will integrate an admin panel into the application to manage both users and the application's data. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind you that you can check out my C# ebook that I have released if you want to learn more about C#. Even if you already know the language, you can find much useful information there, as I have written it to be a high-quality reference guide that you can use at all times. I'll link it in the description below, and we can now begin with the tutorial. So firstly, let's just create a new project in Visual Studio. Let's just select the MVC template, and we'll just enter a name for the project, like Authentication project. And then in the authentication type, we need to select individual accounts. So let's wait until the project loads. And here we can see that because of the authentication type that we selected, we have a data folder created with a context in it. And if we go to app settings.json, we have there a default connection string specified for the database connection. And most importantly, in program.cs, we have a service of the identity specified. So here we can see it here, and this basically is the service that we need to do the authentication type, to do the whole authentication in ASP.NET Core. So let's just run the project firstly to see what it looks like by default. And here we can see that we have a register and a login button in the navigation bar. But firstly, so that we store the users, so before registering any users there, we should go to the database and create a database connection, so that when we create a new user, it will be stored in our database. So I just need the server name here. So I'm opening up the server, SQL Server Studio. Okay, so I'm just copying it down here, the name of the server. Pasting it there and just setting here up, just writing a name for the database. Click OK. Okay, and we just need to copy here the connection string in the properties window, and we're going to be substituting the default connection that the project had with our database that we created. So basically it's better to create your own database for the name and for all of that. In order, so you specify your own name and the type of database. And here we can just write encrypt. We can set encrypt to false because we don't have a password when we connect our project to the database. And in the services in program.cs, by default, the required conferred account is set to true. But in our case, so when we just want to try this identity functionality, we can just set it to false, so that when we register an email account, it doesn't have to be confirmed. Now, all of this we're going to be needing just to add the migrations to the database. And then to update the database. Okay, so if we go to our Server Explorer and we open up the database, the tables, we can see all of these tables are automatically created. So we have there the users tables, the roles tables, and a bunch of other tables. So we can just test this out firstly. We can go here and create an email address and a password. So basically we're just creating a user. And now that we are registered, we can see on top that we have hello and the name of our email there. This is usually what you see even when you log into a Gmail or some other kind of application. So I forgot to mention that you need some Nugget packages before, which I had installed because of the previous projects. So the SQL Server package and the tools package for the database, but most importantly, the Microsoft Identity package, which is essential to our project. So when we go to the controllers, if we go to the controllers, there we can test out the whole login functionality. So if we write authorize on top of each action, each method in a controller, we basically are saying here, okay, so I need to import something on top before. Okay, so basically what we are doing here is we are saying that to go to the index tab, you have to be authenticated. So now, we can go because we have an account, we are logged in. But if we log out here, we can go to the privacy, but we can go to the home tab. So this is basically what it means. So we can go, if we put the authorized tag above any method or class, we cannot enter them without being logged in. So another important topic that I wanted to handle in this video was the roles. So if we want to make a user, to make him an admin or a manager, in order for him to have different kind of duties that we can select to him. So we can need to go to the service that was added for the identity functionality. We can go there and add roles, identity role. And on the bottom of the page, before we run the application, we need to create a scope. We need to create a variable of scope. And we need to storing it a scope service. And then in another variable that I'm calling here role manager. So basically in this variable, we're just gonna be inputting a service that allows us to specify roles in it. So role manager, and it includes the identity role. And here we just need to create a variable of roles. And here we can have an array. We can create an array with the names of the roles that we want to specify. So just as a string, you specify the name of the roles that you want. So I'm writing on admin and like a manager, because any other user is by default a user, is considered as a user. So okay, so now we need a loop to loop through each role. So basically what we are doing here, we are saying that if the roles that we have specified in the line below do not exist, then we need to create them in the database. So since they do not exist in this current time, we are just storing them right now to the database. So create async new identity role. And it takes as an argument the role. So basically all these lines here just create two identity roles for us, and we can check this out when we run the project. And we can open up the Server Explorer view, Server Explorer. We can go to the ASP.NET user roles. Okay, so this is for, we can need to go to ASP.NET roles. And here we have the manager and the admins. If we grab the ID of for example, the manager, and we go to the user roles table, ASP.NET user roles, we here can specify, so we can connect one user with one role, and if we connect our user that we created earlier, the Sean, so if we grab his ID and input it in a table, in a row with the role ID, we are basically, what we are doing here is just making Sean a manager. This is the way to do it using the database. And how we can know that this worked is that we can go to the controller, and in the authorized tags, we can write there a role. Role equals manager, for example. This could be admin. So this method, the index method, can be accessed only by users that have the role of the manager. And for example, the privacy tab can only be accessed by the users that have the admin role. So Now we are logged in with Sean, which is a manager. So we can access the home, the index page, but as you can see, we cannot access the privacy page because the privacy page had to be accessed by an admin, by a user that has a role of the admin. So here I'm going to show you another way to make a user as a role. So to set up a role for a user. So the first one, we set up Sean as a manager. We did this using the database, but now I'm just going to use the code. And I just copied down what I had above. I'm just changing a few things. I'm making a variable as a user manager. And I'm deleting this. I don't need this here. And here I need to write identity user. So I need to specify an email. Firstly, like admin@gmail.com. And a password. So each time the application loads, in case this email that we have written here is null, then we are going to be creating a user. So a user equals new identity user. And this actually only happens the first time we run our application when we haven't created this admin user. So, and then we will set the user's username equals to its email. And the email, of course, to the email variable that we had above. And in this line here, we are just creating the user and we here need to add as an argument the password of the user. And the next thing that we need to do is just to set the role to that user, so to make him an admin. So until this line, we have only created the user. Now we're going to be adding a role to it, and we will set the role to an admin. So all this did is what we did in the previous example when we created the manager, but we did that in the database. This we are doing with code. It's exactly the same thing. You could choose either one. Now if we go here, okay, so we can create it. Okay, so we can access the home, but not the privacy tab because we have a manager. If we log in with our admin account, so if we log in with our admin account, this means that we can access the privacy tab, but of course we cannot access the home tab, which had to be accessed by a manager. So this seems to work. The admin accesses the privacy tab. So this all works here. Another way to specify certain things for an admin or for a role of some user is we can write code in the view pages as well. So for example, on top of the page, first we need to use the Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity. And for example, if an admin is logged in, we can say there, hi admin or something. So we need to inject in the view, in the CS.html files, the sign-in manager, which takes an identity user argument. And we need to also inject there the user manager, which takes also an identity user variable argument there. So by importing these three things, we can access here in the view pages, we can access the information that tells us if a user is an admin, a role, or whatever. So we can just make an if loop here. And check here the role is in a role. So the role of the user is a manager. Okay, so we'll just make a header here, an h2 header that tells, for example, welcome manager. And if the user is not a manager, if it's a user or whatever, we'll just write down here. I'm just copying it down and just write here welcome user or something. Okay, I just need to run the project now. Okay, I have an admin logged in here, so I'm just logging out. Okay, I can check it with an admin as well, so if I go to the home, okay, I can't access the home page, so I'm just logging out. I will log in with the Sean account. It should say welcome manager. So this is how we can access this data in the view pages as well. One thing I forgot to show you is that in the controllers, we can add there in the authorized tags multiple roles, so like this. For example, the privacy can now be accessed even by a manager. So this is a manager account, and it can access, the privacy tab can be accessed by both accounts. In this section, we are going to create a forum web application. Our application will have multiple users, each of whom will be able to post a question in the forum or write an answer to somebody else's question. We will start by creating a couple of models in the database, then we'll create an auto-generated controller, and afterward we'll handle the functionality of the forum. So let's get started. So firstly, let's just create a new project with an MVC template. Click on next. I'll give it a name like forum. And don't forget to make the authentication type of individual accounts. Okay, so this is our empty project. Now let's just add two classes for the models. In this video, we're gonna need, in this project, we're gonna need two classes, one for the questions and one for the answers. So just like Stack Overflow or Quora, when somebody makes a question and then people are supposed to respond to that. So we're just gonna need an int ID property. then a string for a title, another one for the description of the question, and then we're going to relate the question model to the users and of course to the answers. So firstly we need an identity user ID, which is a string actually. If you check the ASP.NET users table, and of course a property of identity user, and I name it just user. So we are connecting the question model to the ASP.NET user model that is created when we created the authorization type of individual accounts. So I'm just going to specify here the foreign key. Okay, next let's just create the answer module as well. And again, I'm going to need an int ID property, a title of type string. I'm actually going to name it content because for the answers, I just need the content, just one. We don't need the title. And we're also connecting the answers model to the identity user. So firstly to the identity user ID and then to the identity user. So basically, whenever somebody posts a question or answers it, we're going to connect that answer or that question to a specific user of the application. Just need to specify here my identity key, the foreign key, which is identity user ID. And I need to make it nullable so that we don't have problems later in the database. And also I'm going to need to connect the answer model to the question model. So I'm going to need the question ID and also a question property of type question. I need to make it nullable as well. Okay, so now I need to specify here the connection of the questions to the answers. So one question can have multiple answers. That's why I'm going to be needing a list of answers, named answers here, which I need to set to be nullable because sometimes when you first create the question, it doesn't have to have an answer there. So next we'll go to the context and specify the two database set instances for the question and for the answer model. So whenever we create a new model, we need to specify the DB set instances. Okay, firstly, I'm going to need to import the forum mode, so the project's models, basically just our two models that we created. So now what I need to do is to create the database for the project. So I'm going to need the server name, which I can get when I open up the SQL Server Studio. Okay, I'm just copying this. I'll just set a name to the database, like forum data. Click OK. Now in the properties window down there, we just need to copy the connection string, which is basically just the address of the database, and we need to store it in appsettings.json. We have a default connection string here, we just need to substitute it. Okay, I'm also gonna need to make the encryption to false because I'm not connecting it with a password or something to the database. In program.cs, we can see here that it is the connection string with the context are connected by default. So basically just the first line just connects the context to the database using the connection string. And we also have here the service for the identity, which we needed to make require confirmed account we need to set it to false because we don't need to confirm the accounts when we create them for this project. I'm just running the project now and I'll wait until it opens up. I'm just gonna need to add the migrations now to the database. I just need to update the database to save the changes. Okay, it's done. In case you haven't installed these packages, I already have them installed from the previous projects, but the identity.entity framework core and the SQL Server and the tools package here are essential to our project. So the last two are for migrating our changes to the database, and the first one is for the authentication. Okay, so let's just create a new controller now. We're just gonna make it with the views included in it. I just specified there the name of the model for the controller and the context, and this basically when you set a template with the view pages, it creates by default the CRUD operations and also the view pages for that controller. Okay, so we have here the methods for all our CRUD operations. We just need to make a bit of changes to it. So we need to include, besides the user, we need to include also the answers. The answers to the index page. So when we open up our first page, we can get the data for not only for the questions, but also for the users and the answers. I'm just going to go quick to the questions views, to the index view. And I'm just going to change it a little bit because here we can see it's a table. I'm just changing the header firstly. I'm deleting the entire table thing. Okay, I'm just going to delete this all. And I'm just gonna take a H4 header for the title of the questions. Then I'm going to display the content, the description of it, in a paragraph tag. I'm also gonna need to display like something for the total answers to the question and who posted the question. So in the front page, this is what you'll see. So item.answers.count counts how many answers are there to the specific question. Okay, I'm just gonna view this page firstly in the browser to see what we're doing. Okay, so until now we just have the header. Okay, so I'm just gonna register an account firstly, so that when we create something or when we comment or when we write an answer, we can see who posted it. So just an ordinary name for the email, which is also the username in our case. So by default, when you use the identity authentication in ASP.NET, I'm just going to register the user. You can see there on the nav bar, hello, and the name of the user. I'm just going to go to the questions tab where the index is, and I'm just going to try to create something, to create a question. I don't know, I just want to take a long question, so it seems like a normal site. I'm just copying this from Stack Overflow, this title and its content. So it's just something long. And normally the user ID shouldn't be shown here, but the rest works okay. So I'm gonna need to change a little bit the styling as well, because I don't see who posted it and it's a little bit messed up there. Okay, so I'm just gonna write in a separate paragraph or in a separate line. Just gonna display the answers there and also who posted it, because I forgot to do. So posted by @item.user.username. That's how normally we should take the user. In the create view page, I don't need the user ID to be displayed because usually you don't see that in your application. So I'm just going to import some libraries here. So we need to import the Microsoft identity and a couple of other things. We need to inject them to the view page. So the sign-in manager with an argument of identity user and a name, like sign-in manager. And the same thing for the user manager. So that we have the information to the user that is currently logged in, which currently wants to create a question. That's the proper way we can take the user ID for the question. And down below, I'm just gonna, okay, so this is a select tag. I just need to, it needs to be an input tag. So this will be linked to the identity user ID when we submit the form. And the value should be, that's what we are taking from the user that is currently logged in. So user manager dot get user ID of the user. So this just gets the ID of the user that it's currently logged in. And we actually don't need the label here, and we should make the input as type hidden, so we don't see this. So the form needs the ID of the user, but the person who creates the question doesn't need to see it. You don't usually make the IDs visible in the forms. So let's go to the controller one more time. Okay, so this we don't need. This was created by itself. Okay, this also we don't need. So usually when we create the controller with the view pages, you just need to see things if something is wrong. You just need to fix a few things. When you don't create the controller from scratch. So this looks okay. We see the name of the person who posted the question. We see that we have no answers until now. And okay, we need to go and fix a little bit the details page as well. Okay, when we create a new question, we can see here that it looks better. We don't see the ID anymore. I'm just trying one thing. I don't know. So the idea of it is you make a title to your question or the main thing what you're talking about, and then you just write more about the specifics of a question you have. Okay, I'm just gonna go to the details page. Okay, I just think I'll make the header. I'm just gonna delete mostly all of them. Just leaving the button to go back to the main list. So I'm just gonna display a header for the title of the question. So this is the way to import the title at model.title, because in the top of the page we are importing just one model, not a list of models as we were doing in the index view page. Next, of course, a paragraph with the description of the question. So at model.description. And another line with just the name of the person who posted it. So in the details method in the controller, we need to include the answers because they won't be connected to the questions model. And we need to write then include, so it's okay. I wrote here comments, it's answers. So in this way, firstly we include the answers and then the user to its answers. So that is pretty much the way you write it. And here, after we write the question, we need a form so that people can write their answer, or like a comment section. I'm just gonna create an add answer method later in the controller, but for now I'm just leaving it like that. I'm just gonna give here just some form group styling to the elements of the answer. So firstly we need an input for the, I think just for the content. Okay, so the name, in the name property of input, we're just gonna write the name of the property of the answers model. So firstly we need to input there the content of the answer. I'll just give the class like form control because that's usually the Bootstrap default or most common classes for forms. And actually I'm just gonna make it a text area because it looks better. It looks more like a comment section. Then I need 2 tags. I'm just gonna copy it here. And I'm gonna need then an input for the ID of the question and for the ID of the user. And I'm gonna make them hidden as well. And in the name tag, we write the name of the property of the answer object or model. So here we have an identity user ID and a question ID that we need to take from the form. But of course, the user doesn't need to see it. That's why we made it hidden. And for the value, we're gonna need what we basically did in the create view page. I'm just gonna copy this here because we need the currently logged in user. And there we will store the ID of the user that is basically posting the answer. So user manager dot get user ID of the current user. I'm just copying it one more time, and here instead I'm writing question ID, and the value actually here is just the ID of the model. So in this details view page, we have a question model. So we'll just take it this way. We'll take the ID of the question. And lastly, we just need a submit button. Doesn't need a name property. So for the value, we just write what's written in the button, what's displayed in the button. And for the class, I'm just giving it the button and a button info class, which is just like a light blue something color. And here on top of above the form, I'm just gonna display the questions, the answers. When somebody types them, adds an answer, they will be displayed above. So just need a header for the answers. I'll just make it all answers. So I'll just make a for each loop to loop through all the answers. So for the answers in model.answers, I'm just taking a paragraph, and inside of it I will store the answer.content and the person who wrote the answer, which is answer.username, I think. As I said, the username is the name of the email in our case because we haven't specifically specified that, but it's okay for our project. And here I'm just going to need an HR tag, which is basically an HTML tag that only just prints a big underline below each comment, so they are separated kind of from each other. So here I'm just going to make that add comment method. So I'm just going to copy the post create method because it's similar. I'm just making it a post method, and the name of the method is add answer. And it takes, let me see the answer model one more time. Okay, so it takes an ID, a content, identity user ID, and a question ID. So I'm just making the changes here. And of course it takes not a question but an answer and displays, I just name it answer, the variable. So if the model is valid, I'm adding the answer to the context, saving the changes, and basically I just need to redirect then to the details page. But when we redirect to the details page, we need the question model actually. So I'm just importing here a question model, a question. So first I need a question variable to store the information from the questions context. So I'm including there the answers. So I'm including there the answers from the questions contest, and then the users of that answers. That's basically pretty much the syntax for it. Okay, so I'm gonna need to specify exactly the specific questions. So I'm just writing first or default async. Okay, let's make an await because it's an async await method. And so basically here I'm just taking checking for the ID of the question from the context and check if it is equal to the answer.question ID, which is the object that we take from the form. I hope it makes sense. And then I'm just going to need to return the details view with the question as an argument, with a question object, with a question variable. So let me just view this in browser and just see if we've made any mistakes. Let's go to the details page to see the comments. Okay, I was just about to do it. So I forgot to include here. Firstly, we need to include the users of the questions. So basically, firstly, you need to include the users of the questions, then the answers of the question models. And when we write then include, it only includes the users of the answers, not the users of the questions. Pretty much this is it, but we need to, I'm just copying it here, and then I write this in the details method as well. I think now it has to be fine. So basically, every time when a model has this external links to other models, you should just be careful with the includes that you write in the methods. So now it looks good. Everything is shown okay. This is our form. I'm just going to try to write an answer and just see then how it is displayed above. So just marketing my channel there. So that's how you display the answers. And when there are a lot of answers, they're going to be separated by this underline, by this big underline. So let me just try to have another user so we can see that the other user can also comment there. I'm just creating one named James. Registering it, and I'm just going to go to the questions tab one more time. Okay, let's go to the details. So we see there that the total answers was 1. It's changed because we wrote an answer. Here I'm just going to try and write something as well so that we see that it catches the username of the person who writes the answer. It's like, how can I learn? I don't know. This doesn't make sense in this case for the question above, but that's not the purpose of the tutorial. Okay, we see that it's displayed again above there. Let's just try to create a question with our new user. Create new. I don't know. I just want to take something long that it looks better. That's why I'm searching in Stack Overflow. Just writing the title there. I just copy a part of the answer of the question, creating it, and there we can see this big question here with 0 answers. The first one has 2 answers. Everything is displayed good. It's the name of the user. So the functionalities are working pretty much okay. So one thing we haven't actually considered is that there we see that the first user can edit the post of the, so the second user, James, can now edit the question of Mason, which shouldn't be happening because we didn't make any checks in the method to check that only the user who posts something can edit or delete it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'll go to the edit method in the controller. And okay, actually, I could just make another if statement there, but I'm just using what I have here because we don't need this to check if a question is null. I mean, we can skip it, we don't need it, but we can skip this. So I'm checking if the question.identity user ID is equal to the user that is currently logged in. So this is the way we find the current logged in user when we're in the controllers page. So just write user.find first value, and it takes as an argument as parameter the claim types name identifier, which is basically just the ID of the user. I think we have imported something here above, but everything imported was by default when we made the authentication type as individual accounts when we firstly created the projects. And that's how we can access this user variable here, user function. So I'm just checking here if the question if the user who posted the question is the same with the user who is currently logged in. Actually, I just need to copy it and paste it to the delete function, to the delete method in the controller as well, because we don't want other users to delete our questions. So I'm just going to paste it here. I mean, I could just leave it that if loop also, but I just substituted it. Okay, let's just run the project once and see if it works. So now that we're logged in with the James account, we shouldn't be able to edit or delete the accounts of Mason, or the questions of Mason. Okay, let's just check it here and go to the edit one. Okay, this doesn't work, it's not working. I think there's a problem in the logic. Okay, so we need to make it a not equal sign, not equal. So we should check if these are not equal with each other, the model's user ID with the currently logged in user. Then we should be returning not found when they are not the same, not when they are the same. Hopefully this works now. Okay, we can reach the page because we're not the user who created the question. We can try delete. Okay, I forgot to change that whole line in the delete method. I'm just gonna do that right now. So we need just to change that little bit piece of logic there. Okay, so now we can access it because we're not the same user. So I'm just gonna write the authorized tags above each method, because if some user is not logged in, we want them to see the questions and the details page. We don't want them to create a question or to delete them or to do anything else or to write an answer. So we just need to put these authorized tags above each function that we don't want users to have access to in case they are not logged in. So this is all this authorized tags make. So I'm just putting it in front above the edit method as well. And in the delete methods also we need that. So I'm just running the project now and check if in case this has worked. So I'll just log out for a moment and go to the tab one more time. So we should see the questions tab, but we shouldn't be able to create something. Or we shouldn't be able to go to the edit tab to edit anything. But of course we can go to the details to see the answers and all. So that worked okay. So lastly, I'm just gonna change a little bit the layout, the CSS of the page, some things, and the structure of it a little bit. So I'm just going to the layout page. I'm actually gonna make it the color of the nav bar. I'm making it like a light blue background. I mean, the page functions correctly, but I'm just changing this a little bit in order to look better. I'm changing the nav bar items, so we can only have the questions nav bar to let it as home. So when you go to home, you see the list of all the questions. Then just writing another nav item to be the create. So I'm just naming it add a question or something. So when you click on it, you can add a question. So I'm just leaving these two navbar items. Submit a question or something. So it's easier to navigate through the whole application. I'm just going to go to the root CSS, site.css. I'm just changing the background of the page as well. I'm just making it like a light gray kind of color, like white smoke. Just checking it to see the application, how it looks like. We can see the navbar items, we can see the white smoke background, but the navbar, so the navigation bar, it's not light blue, so I think, okay, I forgot here, by default, the navbar item has a couple of classes by Bootstrap that specified its color. I just need to delete that because they were overlapping each other. So now it looks much better. When you go to submit a question, we can submit a question, we can create a question. I'm just logging it in to see that. Okay, so we see when we, in the home tab, we see all the questions and the submit a question. We can create a question. But when we firstly load the application, we can see that it redirects us to that home controller, to that home page, which is empty. So I'm just going to need to change that as well. The other pages are looking fine. So in the index page, I'm going to delete this link to create something, to create a question, because we made that navbar item to submit a question. And in the program.cs, we can change here the default controller, which I want to set it as questions. So firstly, I'm closing the application now, but when we start our application the first time, it just shows us the questions, the list of the questions. So from the questions controller, the index page. This looks better now. This looks okay. In this section, we will add an admin panel to the application that we just created in order to manage all the users of the application and their data. We will give the admin the role to manage the users and the questions posted in the application. So firstly, let's go to our Visual Studio and go to program.cs. So in our identity service, firstly, we need to add roles in order to create an admin role. So we just need to write add roles with an identity role as a parameter. Next, we need to go on the bottom of the page above the app.run, and here we can create the roles for our users in our application. We actually did this in our previous video where I showed how you can add user roles. So basically we just need to create a scope variable firstly. And we just need to add a service create scope to this variable. Then we are just defining a variable of a role manager. And we're giving it the value of scope that service provider that get required service. Here in the parameters, we will write a role manager and identity role. Basically, all this does gives us the service to be able to manage the roles of our application. And here we usually have a variable of, I'm naming it roles, where we usually store an array with the names of the roles that we want for our application. So we can create this by ourselves. We can name them whatever we want. I am just creating one single role, which is the admin role for our application, for this video. And basically this now is just a practice where we loop through all the roles and check if they are created. If they are not created, then we can assign them as roles to our application. In our case, we have one singular role, but this is a good practice to make this in a for each loop. So we check if the role already exists. If it doesn't exist, then we store the role, we create the role. So yeah, we create an identity role, which gets a parameter of the role. And this was it. With these lines here, we created the admin role. We just need to run our application. After this is done, we just can go to the Server Explorer. We open our tables of the database connection, and we'll go first to the roles, to the ASP.NET roles. We see here the admin role is created. I'm just getting the ID in order to make one of our users as an admin. So in the user roles table, I'm here storing the role ID that I just copied. And next, I'm just gonna copy the ID of one user. I'm taking the Mason user. I'm taking its ID. I'm storing it in this table here. And just by clicking enter, we basically here just assigned the Mason to the admin role. So that was it to assign an admin. I showed this in the previous video as well. I'm now just going to the layout page in order to make a list in the navigation bar. Basically, I'm just going to make a navigation item only to be visible only by the admin. So I'm checking if the user is in a role of the admin. Then this navigation bar will be visible. And then I'm just going to go to Bootstrap in order to take a drop-down navigation item, which is something new for you to learn in the tutorial, but it's actually, it would be very useful in our application. So I'm just going to the nav bar in Bootstrap, and here you can see the drop-down icon button. I'm just copying here this list class that begins with navigation item dropdown. I'm copying it down as it is. Just be careful to copy it from the latest version of Bootstrap. I'm pasting it down here. And above, I'm just changing the name here to make it admin or admin panel, but just admin is fine. And down here, when we have the links, I'm just gonna leave two. In one of them, I'm just gonna be storing the application users. So I'm just making users, or I'm writing it as manage users. And the next one, I'm writing here manage the questions of the application. And then the href reference, I'm gonna be filling out a little bit later. So I'm just running the project firstly to see how this looks like. Okay, I have to log in with an admin in order to see this navigation item. So firstly, you cannot see it. But if you log in with Mason, which was the admin, you should see a drop-down navigation item shown there. Okay, here you can see the admin nav item. It has a drop-down menu, and here you can see manage users and manage questions. They don't direct you right now to anywhere, but we will fill this later. So I'm just gonna go to the controllers and add one controller. I'm naming it AdminController, and here we'll make all of our methods in order to handle the users and the questions of the application. So I'm taking an empty template and naming this AdminController. Okay. So here, firstly, I'm gonna need a constructor for this controller. And as a parameter, so I'm just gonna type tab, and as a parameter, I'm gonna be needing the user manager, which is basically just a class in ASP.NET Core identity, which has a bunch of methods with which we can manage users. It takes an identity user as a parameter, and a user manager is the name that I'm giving it. And if you click control dot here, you should click on create and assign field user manager, which basically just creates one private read-only variable here, and it assigns the value of the user manager. It assigns the value of this variable that was created above. For the first method, I'm just going to be naming it list users. I'm making it an async await method because we will get data from the user manager. I'm just getting a variable of users, and we'll get from the user manager, we'll get the users dot to list async, which basically just prints out all of the users of the application. And then I'm just returning the view with the users, and I'm gonna need to go to views and add a folder for the admin views. I'm naming it admin, and inside of it I need another view page for the list users. So basically we're getting all the users of the application, passing it to the view, and then here we need to display all of those users. On top of the page we need to write using Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Identity. And then the modal needs to be IEnumerable with a parameter of identity user. So this just basically stores kind of a list with all of the users. I'm taking a header and writing there a list of all users, just something to show what the page has. And here I'm just going to be storing all of the data in a table. I'm giving it a class of table, which is just some bootstrap styling. In the t-head tags, we write what we want in our table header. So basically the names of the columns. And in the first row, in a row tr, which are the row tags, we will store each of the individual columns of the header, so the names of the header. And firstly we need to get, I think it's good to take the username of the user, the email, and the password. We actually cannot see exactly the password, we only can see the hashed password, because this because of the way that we have stored the password in our database, but that's just fine. Next, in the table body, here we need a for each loop to loop through each element of the identity users and take the information for the username, for the email, and for the hashed password. So for each var item in the model, so we need a table row for each item, and inside the table row we need to store the information inside table data tags td. Here we're at item.username, and we can copy this, and we can do the same thing for the email and for at item.email, and we can do the same thing for the hashed password, for the password hash. Okay, so I'm just running the application to see what we can see until now, or if we've done any errors. Okay, I need to go to the layout page in order to specify the route. So in this href tag here, but I'm just gonna be taking this ASP controller, and it was the admin controller, and then the ASP action tag helper. We write there the name of the action or the name of the method right now. It should take us somewhere. Okay, we'll go to manage users, and there is an error. I think I've done something in the list users method. Okay, so basically what I've done wrong here, this is an async await method, and I forgot to write the await keyword here when we take the users. Let's just run the application again. Okay, now everything shows here. We can see two users of our application, Mason and James. We can see their email and their hashed password. And we actually would want a delete button there, because what I'm doing here is the admin has the possibility to see all of its users and being able to delete them if a user is not, I don't know, it's not appropriate or something. So I'm just gonna write an HTTP post method here to delete the users. I'm making it an async await method as well. This takes a string of ID because the users have an ID of string. Here I'm just taking a variable of user, and I'm taking from the user manager, I'm find by ID async. We give them the ID in the parameter, and I'm just gonna check if the user is null to return a not found page. Otherwise, we are just gonna delete that user. So the logic is the same as what we do when we create a CRUD operations in the normal controllers. We're just doing this by using the user manager, not the context in our case. So I'm writing await user manager dot delete async, and I'm giving there the user as a parameter. And I'm just returning view, the view of list users, which is the page with the table of all of the users. And of course, I'm gonna need to go in the list users view page and add the table data with the button to delete. So I'm first gonna need a form that has an action, which is the name of the method, of the delete user method. The method is post. And in order to take the user, we need the ASP_route ID attribute here to specify the ID of the user. We can do this by writing at item.id. And inside the form, we only need a button of type submit. So type submit. And I'm giving it a class to style it, to make it like a red button. So button and button danger, which is the bootstrap class for it. And inside the button tags, I'm just writing delete. So it shows in the view. I'm just running the application. I think I have an error. I probably forgot an await keyword again. So this, you always should not forget that when you make an async await method. But we should see the buttons now when we refresh the page. Here they are. I'm deleting James because Mason is our admin. And okay, we have a conflict in the database, and this all happens because our users are connected to the comments and to the questions of the application, which basically means when you can see the application, if we delete a user, the user is connected with a post, so a question or a comment. And what we need to do in our case, which happens in real life as well, so when you delete a user, we should make it so its questions and its answers are also deleted. And we go to the questions and the users, and where we see the user property, we should write a data annotation of required, which basically means that the user is required for this answer and for this question. And in case the user is deleted, then the question or the answers of the user will also be deleted. So by just writing required, when we connect the modules to our users, this just makes all the work that when a user is deleted, what is related to the user is also deleted. So the question and the answer will also be deleted. If you have tried this in real life, when you delete an Instagram account, for example, all of your comments or all of your likes will also disappear. So it makes sense to make it this way. But I'm just going to need to upgrade to add the migrations because we changed the models. I'm just naming it second migration because I only had one migration in this project. Just gonna need to update the database now. And I hope I don't have any errors, but there shouldn't be any. Okay, if we run the application now, I think we will see the James user disappear. Okay, we'll just go to the admin. Okay, we can do it one more time. Okay, so this basically says that the view page has a null object, which the error here is because we are returning the view of list users without an object. But in our case, we can just write here redirect to action to the list users page. And when we make it redirect to action and not return view, we don't have to pass here an object with the users. So whenever we have a functionality of delete or so, it's better to make redirect to action. So the user was deleted, and we also see that its posts, its questions, and the comments of the user were also deleted. We can see we only have the Mason now. And what we can do now is we can just do pretty much the same thing with the questions of the application. So I'm just gonna need to, in the constructor of the controller, I'm gonna need to have also our context as a parameter, just the way we do it in our normal controllers, because we need to get the questions of the application from the context. Here just type control dot and here create and assign field context. So I'm just copying here the list users method because it's pretty much the same. I'm renaming it to list questions. And here in the variable, we need to get the data from the context, not from user manager. Dot questions, dot to list async. And what we can do in the view pages that we need to create now. So we need to create a list questions view page. We can just actually go to our question controller and copy the index page because it's pretty much the same. So I'm just going to the index page of the questions controller. I'm just copying this here and I'm just I'll make a few changes, I think. Okay, so I'm just changing the header. And I think I'm gonna delete this also, so I just gonna take the title and the description of each question. Let's just go to the layout and change and write there so where this navbar item goes, so just the action of list questions and we specify there the controller of the admin. Go to manage questions, we can see the list of all of the questions of the application. And all we need now is just to make a delete method. I'm actually going to go to the questions controller one more time, and I'm copying there the delete confirmed method because it's pretty much the same with just a few changes, I think. But no, it should be pretty much the same. So I'll just make it an HTTP post method. I'll name it delete question. It takes an ID, an int ID. I'm just deleting the first lines there. Okay, the context doesn't have the end underline. I'm leaving the rest pretty much as they are, so just the context name was not right. And this needs to redirect to the list questions method. Okay, it looks okay. I'm just gonna go now to the list questions page and write here a button, a form, and a button inside of it to delete the questions. So here we just specify with tag helpers ASP action the name of the method. The method is get, and an ASP route ID attribute in order to store there the ID of the question. The ID of the question which we want to delete. So pretty much just what we did in the users when we were deleting users. Just a button of type submit with a class of button and button danger. And here I'm just gonna write delete. Okay, so if I run the application now, should see some red buttons here appear. Okay, I'm just gonna try to delete one of those. And it worked. So one last thing I didn't do is we need to write the authorize tag in the AdminController class. So we need to authorize only roles of admin to this AdminController, because this way, even when some user can go to the URL link of the admin, they can't access it. So this was pretty much what I had prepared for this video. These were the two functionalities that I think that I did for our admin panel. Some people I've seen that they make it so the admin can also edit the users, and it pretty much doesn't make sense, because when you have an application, the admin is supposed only to see the data of the users or all of the questions of the application, and to be able to delete them if they are not appropriate. I don't think it would make sense to be able to edit the users or the questions. But yes, this was it for this video. I think you learned a few things, and I hope to see you in the next video. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next video.